Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. This is a live event, ostensibly for the purpose of debating Matthew Sands. Matthew, if you see this, please jump on. I've only got about an hour to go here. Then I have to be on my way. So let us open this and put the link go here. There we go. We are live. All right. Now, I reckon other people can jump in if they want, whatever. It's going to be a debate between Matthew and I, as far as I can tell. Now then, I've been watching this. Isaac Levitan. See this? I aspire to be this mediocre as a painter. I would like to be this mediocre. He's mediocre in my opinion. See that? Not a lot going on there. That's the type of painting I could aspire to do and see if I could make it decent, you know? Not a lot going on that one. This one, very simple painting. Very nice there, isn't it? Just obviously tire tracks of some kind going up this hill. Some bushes, couple trees. Little tree over here. Very simple. Very nice. Composition-wise, that one's very nice. I like this. Not brilliant, right? Okay, now here's another one that's very, very easy for, you know, beginning painter sort of thing. Triangle shape here. And bit of texture with some dots here for flowers. Some flowers over there. This is nice. This is very simple, very easy, very nice, not too detailed. This one, I have problems with his paintings sometimes. I want more definition on those trees. That's just a little too sloppy for me. Up here, this is all just sort of bleh. But it's okay. The water, see, this one's not a great one. See? He's not a great painter. 437 paintings. Now, this is very strange. This is just, I would be tempted to do that. I would be tempted to do a better version of that and put emphasis on some tool, a couple rakes and tools. And that would give me the thing, the zing to do it. All right, Matt, are you coming on? What is going on? Is he coming or not? All right. Simple sun. Now, what was the shadow situation in that one? There's the sun, white right there. It should be a bit of a shadow there. Where's the white coming from? Is the sun, what's going on? See, bit of weird, bit of weird. All right. Not perfect, not great. And no shadows, I think. What is this? What the hell is this? This is nonsense. We don't even know what this is. We don't know what this is, okay? This is, we need more detail and sharpness, at least in this front haystack. And then some medium detail there, and then let the other ones melt away, fine. But at least tell us what this one is. Give us a little, that's one thing I'm learning about painting is you've got to give some detail somewhere to let them bite into. And you can let their imagination do a lot of work, especially if you're not a very good painter. You just do something for them to bite, and people at least have, like one lady put it this way. She said, wherever your eye is being led to in the canvas, there'd better be a party when it gets there. So that's why I would say maybe right here, some pretty good detail on that. Maybe a shaft of light, a little bit more light on it or something, and some detail on this haystack. A bunch of detail on this one, but maybe our best detail here. And then the other ones can be impressionistic, but you gotta give me something. This is kind of boring, right? All right, more of the haystack. See, this is a little bit better because there's more contrast. going on. So this is interesting. Oh, this makes me feel anxiety of living in Russia. And, you know, I've read so much about Russia that I actually have an emotional feel for Russia. When I see paintings that look like they're in Russia, I feel some sort of dreadful anxiety. And this makes me feel a little bit of this. It's a bit bright, though. And there's this bright green that it's a bit bright. It's a bit colorful. Right here, this is quite colorful. Am I hallucinating that? There is some bright green there, isn't there? This is, I don't know what is going on here. Are these people? This is a very Russian painting. Are those people? Oh, those poor people. There they are doing hay on, what is this, a cloudy day? That's quite a sky, isn't it? Not sure about that. Now, see, here's an example of a simple, simple painting, isn't it? This is a very simple painting that this guy, Isaac Levitan, has done. Interesting. Oh, I'm supposed to be waiting for Matt. Matt, are you coming or not? I'm off on La La Land doing my painting talk. Well, I put the links up. He said, ready when you are, Mr. Cropper. Where is it? Oh, come on. Ready when you are. Hi, Brandon. Ready when you are. Just let me know when you want to chat. I said, click here. Hey. Wonder what's going on. This may not be easy because we're not connected in some other meta way. All right. See, very, very simple painting. I don't know about that dark, dark sky in the distance. What are we going to do about that? This is a vast landscape then, so they can have a rainstorm over there, and here it's very sunny and we're working on the hay. See, I think that it's a very simple landscape with more going on than he has tackled. We need some sort of medium ground in here to give us that distance. And this sky is not busy enough for the story he's trying to tell over there. Big story being told, not very busy sky. This could do, maybe I should do a version of this, damn it, because a little detail in the stacks, a little detail in the citizenry could really make a great painting out of this, I feel. Every once in a while I snap a picture of something. What do we got here? Ready when you are. Yeah, that's old. Okay. I'm ready. Where are you at? Okay. This is lovely. Now, see, this is very simple. And a bit of blue in there breaks everything, tells us water. That has not been incorporated well, if you ask me. Right? But this is a lovely, lovely painting. This does say Russia, but I also let it say countryside Wyoming. And it can do that. Okay, that's really lovely. I'm tempted to just snap a quick picture of that. I get these low quality pictures on this old iPhone. It's an iPhone, but it's an old one. And they do good enough. Now look here, the brightest bit is there, isn't it? And that. Really, really bright white there. I wouldn't dare do that. I wouldn't even dare try to do that. To put my brightest white light in the forest. You didn't notice that, did you? I didn't notice it at first. I just took it to be light coming through the forest. So it's very, very bright. It's the brightest part of the picture. Huh, that's interesting. I wouldn't dare try that if I were a painter. Now I'll have to maybe try it. More with the stacks. I want shadows. And I don't want him to mess around here in the midground. He's just got these big sloppy swiping. I want shadows. The sky bothers me a little bit. I guess we have to work the... Okay, what? The sky's a little troublesome. Now this sea is a very quick painting. Very fast he did this, I figure. And I'm spending more time looking at it than he did on it. He needs shadows in here so I know where my shadows are. All right, Matt, are you coming? I'm having fun doing this art though. Artsy fartsy. That was nice. Look, that's just walking along and there's some trees and you just stop and there you are. Now, maybe is that a cross right there? It's very possible there's a bit of a grave or something. If so, you might want to give a little more attention to that shape, but it caught my attention just like that. Now, Existence University's over here wanting to do stuff about, he wants me to disprove string theory. How would I do that? String theory is a bunch of floating nonsense. Nobody has any evidence for it. No, wait, it's dark matter he wants me to disprove. Same thing, no evidence. Can't disprove it. Where's your math? I have no math. You guys don't have any math except nonsense. That's really nice. Look at this. You know what? I just like this guy. What I like about him, I guess, is very simple, achievable for me. Now look, looking at this, I'm criticizing the fact that I can see the canvas biting through here. I don't know what this is. What's this? What is this? Some kind of, what is that? What was that originally? Is that just, what is that? And this house, he's got this part of the house here, but it seems to break. Why can't I see a line behind that? Does the tree just hide right to the edge? That's annoying, okay? If the tree comes like that, then its branches need to spill over here a bit. Or if not, I need to see the line of that roof, just so I know what's going on with that damn thing. Now, maybe I can't see it because it's direct on. Is that what it is? Maybe that's it. So, like I said, I'm not bothered by that. Right here is the center of our attention. I'm surprised at this splotch of... Oh, who do we got? Matt, how we doing?
Hello.
Very good. All right. I was doing some artsy fartsy for a while. Well, now listen, we've got like 20 or 30 minutes left here.
Sorry, mate. I just saw your message on the thing.
You're fine. Let me see what I got. Probably 40 minutes. Let me see what we got. And what do we want to do here? What do we got? 45 minutes, and then I got to run. What do we want to do here?
Well, I mean, I thought we could just kind of pick up where we left off. I assume you watched my last video reply to you, because obviously you made a comment on there anyway. So I just thought rather than us keep doing video replies to each other, it would probably be a lot more efficient to speak in real time, and then obviously we can question and correct and stuff as we go. I mean, I suppose the ball's kind of in your court a little bit, because obviously my video reply, I don't know what of that you have problems with, what of that you agree with, what of that, you know, you understand, you know what I mean? So you'll have to kind of tell me what you, if there's anything in particular that you thought I misrepresented or still didn't answer, or like, for example, do you understand what I mean when I talk about ruling now? Like, have I made myself clear on what I'm talking about when I say that?
Ruling means to have power over people, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, a little bit more specifically, I was talking, like when I said about the distinction between aggressive laws and non-aggressive laws, I was basically saying that's the same distinction with ruling. You know, like if you know, like I said, like if you enforce the law against rape, you're not ruling people because that's a defensive law. But if you enforce a law against cannabis, then you are, because you're imposing. I mean, basically, I define ruling people as, you know, imposing control on people through force or the threat of force?
Well, the distinction that we make in objectivism is the difference between telling someone what they have to do and telling someone what they cannot do. And a proper law just tells you what you cannot do to other people. You must not interfere with other people in these ways. That's what proper law does. Proper law leaves you free to do whatever you want to yourself. I don't advocate drug laws, for example. I think you can go jump off a bridge if you want. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want with your life. So,
I mean, it sounds to me, and correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, but it sounds to me like in that respect, I know there's other things we might disagree on, but it sounds to me in that respect, we're basically saying the same thing, but just kind of using different language. You know, like, I know you hate the term self-ownership, but when I talk about that, or when I talk about freedom and rights, you seem to be talking about freedom and rights and applying the same definition.
well,
You know,
I think the main difference between us is that I have set down my definitions philosophically, and I'm now willing to pay people with guns to enforce my viewpoint. You are a little bit queasy about that proposition. I say people with guns are going to be involved anyway, so I want my people with my guns enforcing my rules. And I want to live in that society. And you are just a little bit iffy on the proposition of I don't really care about self-ownership. I don't care if somebody believes that they own themselves or not. And if they go rob a bank and they say that it's their self-ownership, I don't care. I'm going to lock them in prison. I don't care. So I justify my view of the situation philosophically, and then I hire men with guns to enforce my viewpoint, called the police. And
why do you? Sorry to interrupt, but why do you think? I don't understand why you think I'm queasy about. I mean, you know, I've already. I thought I made it clear that all of the laws that enforce the non-aggression principle would be enforced with force. I'm not queasy about that at all. I'm just saying that they're the only laws that can be enforced, which also seems to be what you're saying. Which is why, I mean, like I say, we use different language, but when I talk about making the non-aggression principle the law, I know you still have issues with the peace agreement side of it, but just focusing on just making the non-aggression principle the law, you seem to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be advocating basically the same thing, but you're just not calling it the non-aggression principle your law. You're just saying, well, all valid proper laws are defensive laws, and all laws that, you know, go the other way, that violate your rights and violate your freedom, are illegitimate. We're both in 100% agreement on that. But my point is well, all of the laws that you agree that are legitimate and are a valid, you know, and can be enforced with force, men with guns and all of that, are laws that enforce the non-aggression principle. And all of the laws that you agree, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that you also agree shouldn't exist and are wrong and immoral and all the rest of it, are all the laws that violate the non-aggression principle. So that's why I struggle to understand what your problem is. And like I said, I know you still have the thing about the peace agreement, and we can talk about that as well. But just the basic claim that the non-aggression principle should be the law seems to be something you agree with, even if you use different language.
Yeah, I think that we basically agree. Here's the problem. We agree on a rights-based set of laws, but you don't have your philosophy in order, so you don't know where it comes from or how or why to justify it or when it needs to be justified. That's the basic difference between us.
Well, I feel like I do that, so why do you think I don't?
Because you're an anarchist.
Well, I mean, my argument would be, and perhaps this, and I think this is actually where we obviously have our real disagreement, is the objectivist versus anarchist voluntarist thing. But my argument would be that my contention that the non-aggression principle laws are the only things that are valid in that is built on a secure philosophy of rights and freedom, and I do understand where that all comes from, but my conclusion is that if you apply that consistently, then you can't have a ruling government, because a ruling government would violate the non-aggression principle. And as I say, just to clarify, when I say a ruling government, I mean a government that has the power to violate your rights. Now, you don't seem to, I know I realize that, you know, your objectivist state seems to be operating in a way that it wouldn't violate people's rights. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, still seems to assume that power.
It would be, and that's why we have courts. Once in a while, a law would be passed, or once in a while, the state would go about its business in an improper way, and then we would adjudicate that in the courts. That would happen a lot. That's what the courts are for.
But, yeah, but my point is the state shouldn't have that power. The state shouldn't have the right to violate our rights. Like,
no, they don't have the right to do it. They don't have the right to do it. That's why police officers in the United States go to prison constantly. Every single day in the United States, some police officer gets sentenced to jail. Every single day.
And every single day, all the ones that don't get sent to jail are still violating the non-aggression principle on a pretty regular basis.
Well, I'll tell you what, the United States of America has a better model for this system than anybody else in the world has ever put together. So you would do yourself a favor by saying, let's start a constitution, let's write a constitution, and let's tell everybody that within a geographical region that we call this constitutional area, we are going to enforce this constitution. That's what I think you should do. I mean,
okay. I mean, that doesn't sound a million miles away from my peace agreement, but just touching on the comment you made about the United States being the sort of best example or the closest thing we've got or whatever. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to argue against that, but I'm not really coming from a point of view of here's something better that exists than what we've got. I'm coming more from a point of view of here's something better that could exist or should exist in my view, because these are the things that are wrong with what we've currently got. And my issue is every law, like I say, that we both agree, we're both on the same page about what laws should exist and what laws shouldn't exist. But my point is, as you yourself have said, the bad laws, the laws that shouldn't exist, are going to exist now and then because we have a ruling government that has this authority to introduce these laws. Now, my point is I want to put something in place that makes it so that they don't have that power. Like they're not allowed to. You know, like all of the valid laws that we both agree are valid, they don't need any special power to rule people to enforce those laws, because as I said before, those laws are defensive laws. I mean, anyone in theory could stop a rapist. I'm not saying that we should leave it to vigilantes. We're better off having a proper police force and all of that. But what I'm saying is that police force doesn't need special rights and powers to enforce those laws. They only need special rights and powers to enforce the laws that shouldn't exist in the first place. So that's my point. This is why I think that even though we seem to be working on almost the same principles and the same understanding of rights and what have you, my argument is that if the non-aggression principle was the law in a universal way, that would be 100% equal. That's why I talk about like the whole thing with equal rights. But my problem with your way, from what I understand of it, and obviously correct me if I've got anything wrong about it, is you're going to have this one entity that's going to be separate from that, that's going to have extra rights, that's going to be able to make laws, that's going to be able to make other laws. And for me, that's a contradiction to the very principle you're basing everything else on.
That one entity, though, is the people. The one entity that makes the law is us, the people. Now, look, we have a list of things in the United States that the government's not allowed to do. We call them the Bill of Rights. I think that a few things should be added to that. You know, it was the very first time that anybody had tried to make a constitutional republic like this. So they had to slip up on a couple things. So I would just say we need to correct a couple of things, like the state's ability to interfere in the economy. Like you guys are worried about the state having power in the economy to do this, that, and the other. I agree. Let's take the state out of the economy, and then all interactions in the economy would be voluntary on pain of the government putting you under arrest and putting you in jail. Everybody would have to act in a voluntary way in the economy, which they largely do. I mean, you have to unless you're the government. So I think we just need to correct the very few, very small mistakes in the United States Constitution. I mean, look at the fact that we made alcohol and drugs illegal, and now we are rolling back even drug legalization, and alcohol is legal again, except in some counties. The beautiful thing about the American system, that if you think alcohol is evil, move to one of those counties in Tennessee or Arkansas or something and live in one of those counties where alcohol is illegal. If you want to live there, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is though. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but these drug laws and the alcohol prohibition that existed and that, these are things that I would say should never have existed in the first place. I know you agree to a certain extent, but my point is we need to live in a system where they're non-starters. Where, you know, my point is the government doesn't have the right to violate our rights in that way.
Well,
And I know you say that our authority comes from the people, but the problem is the people are just made up of individuals, and like, you know, I don't have the right to do these things. So why can I, even if I get together with lots of other people and we all vote on it, how do we transfer that right over to the government and we don't have that right ourselves? You know what I mean?
Okay.
What I'm saying, where does that right come from? The right the government has.
All right, so I agree with you that it's illegitimate that they do these things. So when we change the Constitution and we just put a thing in there that says the government shall make no law concerning education, the government shall make no law concerning substance, drug use, alcohol, or tobacco use, the government shall make no law concerning, and we just make a list of these things. The government should make, pardon me, the government cannot coin money. When we do this and when we write this Constitution, we're not going to ask people. We're not going to ask the citizenry of the world, are we? We're not going to go on Twitter and say, everybody give your opinion. We are just going to say, here's our opinion of why this should happen. We're going to write it down in essays or books or whatever, and we're going to implement this Constitution, aren't we? This is just what we believe. This is what, we're not going to ask them the same way they didn't ask us, right? We're simply going to set people free to do the drugs they want, own weapons if they want to, say whatever they want, even if it's offensive. We're going to set people free to do it because that's what we believe. And they have made drugs illegal because that's what they believe. So when it comes down to it, we are going to do our thing. If we get the power, we're going to put these laws in place and set people free, and we're going to not let anybody violate those rights anymore. The way that, for example, we can own guns in America.
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously I'd be supportive of your goals in that regard, but my problem with the methodology again is the fact that, I mean, basically, sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this, but
just join my team. Just say, Mr. Copper, what do we do from here?
But I mean, look, put this way, like you said about, like, you know, we'll just have an amendment so that the government can't make laws that do this, and we have a thing that says the government can't interfere with this. I mean, my kind of point is the purpose of this peace agreement idea is to say that government, along with anybody else, can't, and you don't have to make a long list of every little thing. You can just say, why not just have one rule that says that government, and anybody else for that matter, can't have laws that violate the non-aggression principle?
Well, they tried that actually. Originally with the Constitution, they simply enumerated the powers that the government had, and then they got to the end and they said, let's put this into law. And some of them said, no, I want a specific list of what the government can't do. And so that's where the Bill of Rights came from. So, and there was an argument about that because people said, why should we make this stupid list? We already know the government doesn't have those powers because we didn't specifically give the government those powers here in the Constitution. However, that has proved to not even be sufficient. The list of 10 things that they wrote down, pardon me, are not even protected. Even though they wrote them down, they are still being violated for one reason or another. They found the power somewhere in the Constitution to violate virtually everything in the Bill of Rights. So to write just one thing down as a principle is certainly not going to work. I mean, we wrote a whole list of principles down, and then at the end we had to have a little goodie list tagged on at the end that was very, very specific. Can't touch our guns, can't touch our religion, can't search our houses. You know, I mean, we had a very specific list we put in the end.
I mean, maybe the complexity of the list and maybe there's some contradictions in there. Maybe that's part of the problem. I mean, maybe the fact that our basic rights as free individuals has been violated through the Constitution. The reason they found a way is because there's all this other stuff in there, rather than just having this one thing that sits above everything else that says you cannot violate our rights. We're all equal in that sense. Because I understand what you're saying, because the Constitution does kind of flirt with doing what I'm talking about with the peace agreement, with regards to saying, you know, that all people are kind of equal and all this sort of stuff. But somehow, some way, there's also enough in the Constitution that people have managed to find a way to justify all the ways in which that's basically been violated. If the Constitution was only your rights aren't allowed to be violated, if that was it, the entirety of it, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that you can't still have the lists that explain the implications of that basic rule, but if you just focus on that, I mean, that's obviously what I'm trying to do with this peace agreement idea is basically saying, look, the one problem, the one thing that we should have to define law, because it basically defines crime, is the non-aggression principle. I mean, as I say, I know you don't use the same language, but you basically argue the same thing when you talk about proper laws and illegitimate laws. So, like I say, we're on the same page on that regards. But my purpose for trying to get this, you know, to do this peace agreement thing of actually making the non-aggression principle the law that stands above everything else, that would force governments to become what we ideally want them to be, rather than kind of letting them have the power to be all sorts of things that, you know, they shouldn't be, and try to fight everything on a micro level. Or when this law comes out, oh, we'll try and tackle that. And when this law comes out, and try and tackle that. If we basically had it, you know, written in stone or whatever, but, you know, if we basically had it as the fundamental universal law that you have right over only yourself, and that is it, and, you know, and just have that as the thing, then I don't really see. I'm obviously it can still be violated and ignored and all the rest of it, but I certainly don't see how it could be used in any other way than that. You know, like, whereas the Constitution has been, the Constitution has all this other stuff that contradicts the rights that it seems to be endorsing.
Yeah, they have something in there called the Commerce Clause. Congress shall have the the power to regulate commerce. Very, 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 very short. That's it. Just a few words. And that interstate commerce, pardon me. Now, that has led them to have all kinds of powers that the Founding Fathers didn't foresee. And the Founding Fathers only gave the Constitution the power to regulate commerce that goes between one state and another. So if it's inside of a state, then the federal government has no power over it, according to the Constitution. But this went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said that because you buy corn in Texas and move it in Texas and sell it in Texas and feed it to cows in Texas, still counts as interstate commerce, because you didn't buy corn that might have come from somewhere else. So you affected the price of corn from Kansas because you didn't buy it. Now, they can interpret these things very broadly. The only way to get around this is to take that power out and just say, the government has no power to regulate commerce. Now, we did this with guns, we did it with speech, we did it with religion. And to this day, Americans have guns in numbers that are amazing compared to the rest of the world. Not every state, some states are clamping down on it, and those are the most violent states. Chicago, you have no gun ownership, and it's violent as hell. So the states that have guns, though, are peaceful. Texas is very peaceful compared to Chicago. And there are a lot less police. You don't like police officers. Texas has 1/3 or 1/4 the number of police officers per capita as Chicago does, and a lot less crime. So we can have a society where everybody is basically in charge of themselves, and where if you go try to violate somebody's rights, you're going to have to you might be killed. And when the government comes to take your body away, they're not going to arrest the guy that killed you because you broke into his house. That's what it's like in Texas. So we can have a state of basic anarchy like you want. I just think we need to expand the list of things the government can't screw with. We've got religion on there. We've got speech on there. You guys in Britain are screwed. You don't have freedom of religion. You don't have freedom of speech. You can't own guns. You guys are totally screwed.
Well, I think we're all screwed to varying degrees, but yeah, I'll take that. We're probably more screwed in England than America, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the thing is like tackling each individual thing as opposed to having one basic law that just takes care of it all in one foul. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we don't have to have the same argument about why you can't have a drug law, and then they try to bring up, well, we want to stop you, make gambling illegal, and then we have to have the argument, well, why you can't do that. You just can't interfere with that, you know what I mean? Like, unless they're harming, you know, like I say, and then it just comes back to this non-aggression principle thing. I just think that the non-aggression principle strikes, and making it law and using that to define what law should be and what crime is, I think that strikes at the heart of everything that we both seem to kind of agree is the problem, you know, but like, you're tackling it in individual pieces and saying we should keep the system and use our principles to fight these individual wrong laws that come about from this ruling government that's, you know, inevitably going to keep bringing up wrong laws because it has that kind of power to do so. And my point is we should take that power away from them. And my point is if the non-aggression principle was established as law, if what I was talking about came to fruition, then that would force all governments to comply and basically become the sort of objectivist state that I've heard you speak about, that only acts to protect people's rights and doesn't act to violate them. But it would make them have to be like that, because they're not allowed to exist in any other form. Like I say, ruling governments would be illegal. Governments that only protect your rights. I mean, I've said before, I've always defined governments as ruling, so I come up with a different term, which is voluntary collective, for what governments would turn into in a free society. But my point is if we establish the non-aggression principle as law, then all of the governments would have to turn into what I would call a voluntary collective, what you would call this objectivist state, which you seem to be advocating for. But you know what I mean? It would happen across the board. I'm not saying it's going to happen like magic, but what I'm saying is that's the implications of the non-aggression principle being the universal law above the authority. You know, like, no one has authority over that. And then whether you're an individual person, whether you're a corporation, whether you're a government, whatever you are, you're all playing, but we're all playing by the same rules. No one has any right over anybody else. We all have the same basic right, and the restriction or the condition that's attached to our freedom is the same for everybody. Just don't mess with other people's freedom, and you carry on as you go.
Well, I think that's the proper way to view it philosophically. So I think go ahead and hold that view, and then you should view geopolitics around the world with that view. Like, for example, if Saudi Arabia does something horrendous, we should bomb the shit out of them, and Iran too. So and defend that view, defend the view that your rights are sovereign, that you are sovereign as an individual. Yeah, but you're never going to get all the governments in the world to, you should start with hopefully, possibly getting one government somewhere over one patch of territory to adopt these principles. And then that government will fight tooth and nail to defend itself, because then everybody is going to want to break in there and get everything that you've built. So you're never going to get all the governments in the world enlisted. That's what this first thing that I had here. We are in a state of anarchy. We are in a state of anarchy right now. The earth is in a state of anarchy.
You're going to have to elaborate on that, because I'm not following you.
Well, anarchy is a place where there's no boss, where the biggest, toughest guy wins, right?
Oh, I got you. Okay, so the government's all operating like little mafias, basically, and because there's no one in charge of them.
Yeah, exactly. There's no boss, and anybody who thinks they're the boss, that's called a world war, when somebody thinks they're the boss.
I guess I want to make the non-aggression principle the boss. I mean, like I said, I don't think any person should have that, right? But if you have this principle that's based on the like I say, the rights and freedom that we both seem to agree is how rights and freedom should be defined. I mean, I know you hate the term self-ownership. As I said before, the only reason I do use rights and freedom as well. I'm happy to talk to you and just say rights and freedom and not say self-ownership. But the reason why I use that term when I'm talking to other people is, like, if you're talking to someone of a left-wing persuasion and you talk about protecting rights, they think, well, I have a right to healthcare, so the government should protect my right to that by making you pay for me, and you know what I mean, and stuff like that. Or if I say, if I talk about freedom, I've legitimately had a conversation with somebody who has legitimately argued that even the non-aggression principle law would be a violation of their freedom, because their freedom includes the right to rape, murder, and rob, and all the rest of it. Like, you know, they expanded freedom to mean also violating other people. I mean, we don't define freedom that way because we define it in a universal term, like, you know, in a way that's universalizable. But
Well,
the reason why that's the reason why I use other language sometimes to describe what you just would say, what you would just use freedom and rights to describe. As I say, I would also agree with those definitions, but I often talk about self-ownership when I talk to people so that they're clear. When I'm talking about rights, I'm talking about only negative rights that are associated with the concept of self-ownership and the non-aggression principle. So
correct. Now, that friend of yours who said that he has the right,
wasn't a friend of mine, I just someone I spoke to.
this acquaintance of yours who says he has the right to rape and murder, he would end up in either our jails, prisons, or dead.
Yeah, that would be true of both. That'd be true of what I'm advocating for and what you're advocating for. As I say, I'm not. That's why I was a bit confused why you were like saying that I'm kind of squeamish about the whole idea of. I'm not squeamish about enforcing just laws. Like I say, you know, like the whole point of making the non-aggression principle of the law is the non-aggression principle saying when you can use force. So my only problem is that, you know, currently we've got so many laws where force is being used, you know, initiated against peaceful people and what have you. But when it comes to enforcing the non-aggression principle, there's plenty of room to be very harsh in the way that you do that. I mean, as long as you're staying within proportion to, you know, the crime. You know, like I say, I wouldn't even rule out death penalties.
Wait. Why do we have to be within proportion to the crime?
Well, because I don't think you could execute somebody for petty theft, for example, but you could execute somebody for murder or rape because it's proportionate to the crime, and also you've got the argument of it's proportionate to the level with which we need to defend ourselves against this individual because they've shown that they will murder and rape and all that. But if they've shown that they will, you know, steal a loaf of bread or something, then it's still a crime, but it's not proportionate to kill them for it.
Okay, what if they keep stealing? What if they steal again and again and again? What about their 10th time? Then,
well, then it's them that's escalating.
Yeah. Then do we lock them up?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that doesn't mean that we're assigning that punishment for that crime. They're the ones that have escalated it.
All right.
You know, like for example, if someone, it might not be like if someone stole your wallet and ran off, I don't think you should be allowed to execute them. But if you tried to get your wallet back and then a struggle ensued and it escalated to a situation where you did end up having to shoot them and you were justified because you had that level of defense and all the rest of it, then they've escalated the situation. So that's not the same as saying that executing someone is a valid punishment for petty theft. We're saying that petty theft is a crime, and if they escalate the conflict to the point where you do need to use lethal force, then that's because they've escalated it to that level, not because that is the start of punishment for that crime.
Okay. All right. Now listen, if somebody takes your wallet, you have to call the police. You can't go after them because that's called vigilante justice in America, and you can get put in prison for that. Okay?
No, hang on a minute. I'm pretty sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that citizens do still, even in our current state of society, citizens exercise a certain power of citizens arrest, are able to defend themselves against initiations of force, which a robbery would be. So are you sure about that a citizen would not be allowed to? I mean, they might not be advised to, but would they really be punished if they use proportionate force to get back a wallet that was stolen from them?
Yes, because here's the problem. The police show up, there's a dead body, and the guy tells his story, and the police then say to him, well, look, you should have called us then. You can't let it get out of control. Like, if there's a situation where force needs to be used, you call the police. You can't take justice into your own hands. That's why those laws came about. It's actually illegal for you to enforce the law yourself because we can't have citizens running around enforcing the law.
Why not?
Because that would be chaos. That would be mayhem. That would be utter mayhem because some guy would break into my house and kill me. And then the police would come and he'd say, he stole my wallet, and then he escalated it, and I was self-defense. And in America, we would say, okay, well, that's a bunch of bullshit, buddy. You can't just murder somebody, call it self-defense, and then hope your story holds up. If somebody's stolen something from you, you call the police, you make a report, and you give the proper information to the authorities and let them take it.
Yeah, but in America, if your story did hold up, you would get off the charge. You would get away. I mean, you do have the right of self-defense.
But if I
So, like, you're talking about evidentiary concerns, like, for example,
Vigilante
how do
justice.
you prove that it was self-defense? And that's the same problem in a status society as it would be in a free society. But my point is even in the current society, you have right to defend yourself, and then if you're able to prove that, you know, that you didn't act in an initiate, you know, you did act within proportion to the offence against you, or, you know, like if in a case of where you shot somebody and it was defence, and you're able to prove that, like it was videos or whatever, then you would get off of it. So
Yeah, it's not necessarily proportional if someone breaks into your house to rob you and they end up dead. That's not proportional, but in Texas, you'll face no charges.
well, it is, because, like, for example, I know I said it's not proportional to execute someone who's robbing you, but someone breaks into your house, the threat they're posing to you could be anything, including killing you. So that's why, you know, people have the right to you know, defend themselves with lethal force against home invaders, because the home invader could be, for all they know, acting with that intent, you know, and they've already violated their homes, they've already initiated aggression of some description. The fact that the homeowner has no way of knowing whether their intent is to rob or whether their intent is something more severe doesn't change the fact that they have the right to, you know, defend themselves accordingly.
Well, I'm close to the time. I got to run out of here, Matthew. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you taking time. Sorry I was a little bit late to the party. If you obviously want to carry on the conversation another time, I'm happy to do that. But I do think we've at least, through these video responses and this conversation here, at least clarified where we both stand a little bit more, and at least we can focus on where we actually disagree. Because I think a lot of the original disagreements weren't necessarily disagreements, but because we were using different language perhaps to describe the same thing. Yeah, like I say, we both seem to agree what laws should exist and what shouldn't. We have a different idea on how we should go about it, but at least we know that that's what we disagree on, and that's what we do agree on.
Yeah, I just want to expand the list of things the government's not allowed to do from the American Constitution by 5 or 10 things, something like that, and then I'll be happy. So they actually, we live by this principle. You have this one thing, the non-aggression principle. We have 3. We call it life, liberty, and property. And it used to be a tradition in our courts that anytime a law was struck down, the judge would say, this violates his right to life, or this violates his right to liberty, or this violates his right to property in this way or that way or the other way. That was just you had to justify any strike down of any law in that way. And nowadays you have a right to not be afraid, and you have a right to a fucking job and a house and all kinds of shit. So it's really got out of control.
It contradicts the other stuff, basically.
Exactly. But if we start with those first 3, which were our founding principles, that's why we said we were independent from Britain originally, to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And pursuit of happiness, in our philosophical writings of the founding fathers, pursuit of happiness and the right to property that you earn by your labor is identical. So it's a right to property which is free from taxation without representation, for example. All right.
I mean, sorry, cool.
No, I was just gonna say, all right, I've got about 5 minutes if you want to do some finishing remarks, and then we'll, you know, maybe we could pick it up again. I think you basically agree with me, and you just need to drop the anarchist bullshit and come on, be a Republican constitutionalist.
Well, I mean, I would echo similar sentiments by saying it sounds very much like you almost agree with me, but you just need to drop this whole "we need a government" thing and understand that applying these principles consistently leaves you with only the choice of voluntarism or anarchism. I mean, I prefer voluntarism to anarchism because anarchism's not specific enough. That's just like no government, no rulers. Voluntarism is, well, the reason why there should be no governments and no rulers is because we will have right over ourselves and only ourselves. And that's, you know, that's why I obviously have the idea. And like this life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness thing, I mean, for me, the non-aggression principle encompasses that. And if we want to identify where the founding fathers went wrong with regards to the Constitution, it's the fact that bit they got right, obviously, but the problem is they created this government that was a contradiction, that had all these other powers and rights that contradicted the one bit they got right. They just needed that one bit, or the 3 bits as they laid it out. But as I say, that's pretty much just what the non-aggression principle is as well. Your life, your liberty, I mean, and again, like you say, the property thing, like I say, that's just liberty. That comes from the liberty thing. So I don't even think you need 3 things. I just think you need the non-aggression principle based on, you know, the idea of everyone having right over only themselves. So yeah, I'm definitely up for another conversation anyway. So
all right,
yeah.
I'll just say this in closing. I'll just say that the problem with the non-aggression principle is that it is not a first principle, because it deals with a situation between 2 individuals, whereas life, liberty, and property are owned by a single individual. When you say non-aggression, you're starting to talk about the philosophy of the interaction between people already. And so to use that as a first principle is just confusing and crazy, and we'll have to leave it there. So maybe that's where we'll take up next time. All right.
I'll rebut that later then.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matthew. See you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.